giving you the real from A to Z surrounding the Dallas Cowboys. News, updates, rumors, transactions, takes, and more. So strap up, Cowboys Nation, and start your day off with A to Z Sports. Live with Will Steele.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go. Good morning, good people. Welcome to A to Z Sports Live. We are streaming live on YouTube. And of course, I am your host, Will Skywalker Steele. Boom! And I have the wonderful, the only Bryan Broaddus, our Super Bowl winning scout, joining us today. Welcome in, B.
Hey, Will, how's it going? Good to see your face again.
Always good to see you. And you're no longer a guest on this show. You can come to the crib, open the door, go to the refrigerator, get you some Kool-Aid and kick it with us, man. You're no longer just a guest. You're part of this thing.
I appreciate that, man. I love all these platforms I get to be on. You guys are some super talented folk. Talking the good talk about the Cowboys. A lot to get into about this team now that camp's over, and kind of trying to figure out, what's their next steps with cut downs being on Tuesday. Yeah,
you had a very unique perspective of camp this year, being out there for the entire time. So I figure, there's no one better to talk to about some of these awards we're going to go through. I talked about, Kool-Aid, right? Training camp is the ultimate Kool-Aid, because it's the beginning of the season and everybody's 0-0. There's the excitement of the new guys. And I wanted to really speak with someone that saw everything from a scout's eye type of view down there, because you've been everywhere this offseason, Bryan, giving some great takes. And I said, this is the best way, I think, to round out and end camp.
Well, thank you, Will. I appreciate that. Yeah, I had the honor to be a part of it. I know with you and Voch and Jazz and others that had me on the platforms, the various platforms. I was from camp, at the tennis courts there, locked in, with press conferences and practice and getting to run into players and being around the guys and gals that cover the team and, being around the team. You learn so much. And like I said, I really want to thank, Gavin Spittle on my end on 105.3 The Fan, my boss, and Derek Eagleton from DallasCowboys.com for making that possible. You get so much out of being at camp the whole time, and it just gives you the perspective that you need going into the season about these players and, who they're going to rely on and who maybe they are going to have to move on from and how they're going to maybe navigate not having certain guys in the building. And I'm sure we'll get into all that.
There will definitely be some roster gymnastics that'll be happening.
Yeah.
Good morning, Bomb Squad. I forgot to shouts out them.
Bomb Squad!
Got to make sure we recognize our wonderful fans that wake up every morning and join this show. So thank y'all for joining us. And let's get right into it. We got some training camp awards. And I want to start off with, in my opinion, when I think about training camp, I'm always looking at who is the most improved player at training camp, because that's where you're trying to get better, right? So in your opinion, from what you've seen in July all the way through August, who's your most improved player down there at camp, Bryan?
Yeah, I think, Will, I have to start with Jalen Tolbert. And there were a lot of questions about Jalen coming into training camp. And when camp opened, let me go back to when we had OTAs and mini camps at the Star. It's guys were kind of getting into the routines. Guys were getting into their training. It was kind of the start of where this thing could potentially go. And I had my concerns about Jalen Tolbert's toughness, his mental toughness, maybe not the physical toughness, but the mental toughness. And I know that he, and then him and the other Jalen Brooks, I felt like there was going to be a legitimate battle for that third spot. And with Jalen Tolbert and Brooks, the first few days of practice, it was very close. The way that they both were competing, the way they were running their routes, the way they were finishing with their catches. You were like, okay, this is going to be a good one. And then as camp wore on, Jalen Tolbert became a better player. And it's no shot on Jalen Brooks, because we've seen Jalen Brooks and, various opportunities make big plays. We go back the Rams game, he was able to make the catch from Cooper Rush down the sideline, and he was making a lot of big plays. Jalen Tolbert was just that much better than him. And the practices, the consistency, that's what you got to do. If you're going to be a receiver in the National Football League, you have to have consistency, practice after practice, game after game, and be that guy. And I think that Jalen Tolbert solidified himself as that third receiver over Jalen Brooks.
Man, as you were talking and you were bringing up Jalen Brooks, I was thinking about a lot of the deep balls that were going to him through camp.
Right.
And, one thing and I know he's not here anymore, and he kind of flamed out anyway in Dallas, but one thing Michael Gallup did at the height of his career here in Dallas is he was Dak Prescott's deep ball guy.
Right.
And if you think about it, we really didn't have that last year. Lamb can do it, but Lamb was more in the intermediate game, get some yak. Cooks and Dak didn't connect quite yet on that, and Gallup wasn't the same Gallup. So I looked at it as who can really replace the deep ball threat. I think Tolbert in college showed that ability, but we haven't seen it yet in college or in the pros. But we've seen Jalen Brooks go out there and be a deep ball guy. I wonder if those two during the season, they kind of try to figure that part out.
Yeah, I think so. I think there were some things at camp that would lead you to believe that they're more interested in throwing the ball down the field that manner. I would love to see Cooks get more opportunities. Anything with Cooks, his ability to separate is so impressive. His ability to, even if he can drive guys off, bring back, come back for the ball, get to the out, but he could also get vertically. And I think that Dak has the ability to, with some deep ball touch. We've seen him before in some practices. And you mentioned the Gallup and that ability. I would not be one bit surprised to see Mike McCarthy open up games or try to get things going that way with Cooks or with Brooks being the recipient of that reception.
So we got Jalen Tolbert as your most improved. I want to know, and everybody loves a good comeback story. Right. Who started off this camp iffy? You're kind of looking at them sideways, but now they're heading back to Dallas. They're about to head into the preseason 3, and you're like, man, this guy made a hell of a comeback in this camp, and he's now on the radar to either A, make the team, or B, have a very big role on the team.
Well, when I think of comebacks, I immediately think of Terrence Steele. And the thing with Terrence Steele is that last year, I don't think Terrence Steele was completely healthy. And I mean healthy in a way of Terrence Steele's game. And your fans know this, you know this. Terrence Steele is one of those guys that's not going to be a powerful football player. He's not going to blow you off the line of scrimmage. He's not going to run you off. But what he can do is his athletic ability. He's really good at the cutoff blocks. He could reach block. He could scoop. All these things where there's combination blocks involved with the tight ends, or say with Zach Martin or whoever gets to play next to him at times. Sometimes TJ Bass would play next to him. But the thing that I really liked about Terrence Steele is that, and Mike McCarthy even brought this up. He said that Terrence had his best camp. I think that Terrence had his best camp because he's back to being what Terrence was, and that's a good foot athlete. There's still times if you really want to defeat Terrence Steele, you could run him inside as hard as you can, and sometimes he can't stop you from doing that unless he cuts you off and then gets in front of you and makes you go over the top of him that way. But he looks like he's a lot more movement, and his movement is better, and movement is better than what it was pre-knee injury. So I think that's a comeback story in itself. Man,
if Terrence Steele can get back to being the player that he was in 2021, 2022 prior to the injury, I think that takes this line to a different stratosphere and allows you to have those up and downs with the Tyler Guyton or Cooper Beebe because you can count on that right tackle to be steady Eddie. And I think prior to the injury, he was one of the more steady right tackles in the league.
No question. His ability to work with Zach Martin as with the combo blocks, to push Zach to the second level, him get his head across. Man, that was some really good textbook stuff that you were seeing. But he's getting back to what he was. That movement is always going to be a big part of his game. When defenders try and take him hard up the field, rush him up the field, he's good enough athlete to kick wide, push, and push the guy past, but again, the power and all that, it's still what Terrence Steele is. It's a lack of it at times. But when you start to talk about the foot athlete stuff, that's becoming on point again.
Last thing here on Steele, and I always bring this up to the fans, the Packers game I thought was really the turning point for me, that gave me confidence for moving forward with Terrence. He was a totally different player, a different athlete. You saw more confidence, with that knee. He was firing out. I honestly think he was, one of, if not your best offensive lineman in that game, or most consistent offensive lineman. And that,
for sure.
That made me say, I'm good. I don't have to worry about Terrence Steele next year. But the fact that you're saying even in camp he's kept that up, I really feel great about Terrence moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the rookies, brought them up. This one might be tough, Brian. I feel like these have been a little easy on you now, but who's been the best rookie? Because there has been moments from all of them. I feel like Carson was coming out on fire. We know about BB right now, Guyton, Nealon, Flournoy. I mean, this rookie class looks like it's going to have a better impact than the previous rookie class. So this might be a little tough. Who's your best rookie?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. With the exception of Thomas, the guard.
Nate Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, every one of these guys have found a way to contribute in games, practice games, if you want to say the stuff versus the Rams. I really wasn't sure. There's two guys, but I'll give you the one. I really wasn't sure about Marshawn Nealon as a pass rusher. I really wasn't. And I had my questions too about Leofau at linebacker. Those were my two spots where I was like, okay, I'm looking at running backs here. I'm looking at, during the draft, I was thinking, okay, there's another position here. Not looking at a linebacker, but they had a plan for what they wanted to do at linebacker. They had a plan. Their linebacker room will make them a better run defense unit just because of the ability to fill, to read, to tackle. This group they've got all these things together. But I will say this though, I wasn't sure with Marshawn Nealon, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, you got Sam Williams. He could back up Sam Williams. He could be fine. He'll back up, and you'll figure it out. But Marshawn Nealon's a better pass rusher than I gave him credit for, and we haven't seen that finish yet. We haven't seen the sacks. But the pass rush ability is there. The ability to get the shoulder past the blocker, get underneath, sharpen the angle, and get in on the quarterback. With these quarterbacks that they played the last couple of weeks have really got rid of the ball pretty quick. But the times where they've pressured, it's affected throws. And I think that with Nealon, and Nealon can play a couple different spots for you. They got down against the Rams in the second practice that they had. They got down at a goal line period. And it was Tank, it was Nealon, it was Osa, and it was Parsons. Rams had no answer there. Rams ones versus that group had no answer down in the red zone. Pressure was there, run defense was there. It was pretty. Zimmer was getting off the field. The Rams were it was Jimmy Garoppolo. It wasn't like some bum quarterback. And you might think Jimmy Garoppolo's a bum quarterback. He's a veteran quarterback that's won games in this league. But they were affecting him, and they were affecting the Rams' offense, their ability to run the football and their ability to throw the ball down in the tight red zone area. And I think the thing with Nealon is he gives you that flexibility to be able to play on the edge. I think he's going to be your starting right end. Now, we'll see what happens with Carl Lawson. But just initially, I feel like that it's going to be Marshawn Nealon and on the right side, Tank on the left side.
One of the things I'm really impressed with Nealon, like I knew coming into the season, he had what I thought was grown man strength. He had NFL strength, but to see it on the field, now again, these may be some backups, some of them. I know they played the Raiders starters, but to see the strength that he has already is extremely impressive. So as he's adding into his bag of pass rush moves, what I'm confident in is that he's going to put pressure on the quarterback just by sheer will and athleticism and strength. And he's going to give some left tackles a lot more trouble, probably, honestly, than Dorrance did as a semi quasi starter because Dorrance isn't as, I don't think he's as strong as Marshawn Nealon, and you never really
No.
seen him get that type of push consistently.
Right. The run defense.
Run defense, yeah.
Yeah. Nealon is my best rookie. And like I say, I think they've. You could talk about Guyton and all those others, but I think what Nealon, where he has come from since the day he was selected to where he is about to help your football team. I think his journey has been the best that I've seen.
Let me pivot right quick before we get to our next award. You have brought up the linebackers. You talked about them being better in the run game just strictly because the backers. I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
But then they went out and they added Jordan Phillips. They added Linval Joseph. And I know you've given your opinions on these two in the film breakdown, and appreciate you giving us some of your notes. But I want you to kind of explain to some of the fans here those additions and what it could mean for these linebackers in the run defense.
Yeah, I think there's when you look at Phillips and, before they got Joseph, I kind of felt like, because I've seen Phillips play the one or the nose. Saw him do it against, Kelsey at Philadelphia. Saw him do it against Broaddus in Dallas last year.
Yeah.
And so, the thing that I was most impressed by him was how his ability to play with range. Linval Joseph is a little bit more of a stationary player. He's a little bit more of an A to B gap player, whereas Phillips is a little bit more of a wider range guy. And so what happens is you have two big bodies inside, and you always talk about, take up blocks. Yeah, if the Cowboys linebackers take up blocks, give them a half step, these guys, Kendricks, Leofau, Overshown, Clark, you give them a half step to get to the ball, there's going to be a tackle. They had a perfect example, and they ran a scheme the other day, and Willie Harvey was in the game with Leofau, and they got really good play from Rodgers up front. This was in the Raiders game. They got a really good block or a really good set up front from Rodgers. Leofau filled the B. Willie Harvey was just a tick late getting over to make the play, or is a gain of one or a gain of two. And that's where I said, okay, now imagine Phillips or Joseph playing, at the point. Now you got a fill linebacker, say Leofau's in there, Overshown, fill linebacker, and now you got one of the others running over the top. That helps your run defense right
Absolutely.
there. Dallas was not very good when it came to their run fits. Their right edge last year, whoever played right end, whether that was Armstrong, Williams, Fowler, you got pushed up the field, you got stretched. You didn't get a linebacker over because Bell was fighting blocks because of his size. He wasn't a natural linebacker. Played better as the year wore on, not a natural linebacker. You didn't get a fill from a safety because you're playing single high stuff, and you'd miss that. You missed the fill from the safety in the alley. And then Diggs wasn't always interested in, squeezing that edge. They'll get better. They'll get better because of the down lineman, the edge in say Nealon, and then you got linebackers that could fill and run, and that's what's going to make their run defense better.
B, I'm going to put you back in the scouting department in Dallas because for some odd reason I got the power to do it. So I'm hiring Bryan Broaddus. He's now working with Will McClay. He's got the Joneses' ears. He's got the coach's ears. And you're looking at this now new defensive tackle room, and you're like, man, 330-pound one tech and Joseph. I got 340-pound athletic Phillips. Phillips can get down the line, by the way. I think he's so underrated with his athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in that room, what would you do about this Mozzie Smith playing time situation? Because from a distance, I look at it, and if I'm trying to win, 1 year deal for my coach, my head coach, 1 year deal for the defensive coordinator, 1 year deal with the quarterback. I don't really have time to say, well, you know what? Let's just throw the second year guy out there and just live with his downside, and it might cost us something. As opposed to Linval Joseph knows what he's doing. Jordan Phillips knows what he's doing. What would you do? Are you starting Mozzie? Are you playing him a lot? Or are you letting these veterans get the go and he kind of comes in as the role guy?
I think he comes in as the role guy. And I think that's why that Mike Zimmer, by the way, Will, I don't think they're done at defensive tackle, adding guys. I don't. And that's the impression I got leaving camp. And so, that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I'm looking at this and saying, with Mozzie, I've bought myself the ability. It's just like having Hankins, right? I knew that my net was Hankins, that if I had to play with a guy, Hankins was that guy. I didn't have to play with Mozzie. And this is the unfortunate thing but I give them credit because they could have said, damn it, we're just going to play Mozzie. The hell with it. We're going to play him and we're going to see what happens. And away we go. And I applaud Will and Mike and Jerry Stephen. I know that's a very unpopular thing to do nowadays, but they've brought in, they're not sitting there and just hoping for the best for their defense. Look at the number of guys they've tried to bring in here.
Yeah.
And wrote, and a lot of it might be because they feel like that, Mozzie Smith is just not good enough. And maybe, Todd Archer always says this. I love when Todd says this, the grown man strength. Grown man strength. That's what you've got now. You've added grown man strength to this room. And, we'll see what Mozzie and Rodgers and those guys and how they develop. But you've bought yourself the opportunity not to have to play Mozzie Smith all the time. You can pick and choose, get him to go, at certain levels. And if he's good enough, keep giving him more. But if he's not, then you kind of know where you're at.
Tell you what, man, if they're still hunting defensive tackles, I do think the concern level rises surrounding 58. Because I think Jordan Phillips is going to be your 3-tech guy to work with Osa right now, according to what he's saying. And you got your 1-tech in Linval. You got Osa. Another defensive tackle, Bryan?
Yeah. I don't think they're done. Keep an eye. We got cut down day on Tuesday, and I left camp with the impression that they were still working on something else. And I don't want to get into it because again, I don't want to mess up any trade talks that they might have or any players they're looking at to give you a name, but they're still hunting.
Well, I applaud them for hunting.
Yeah.
I applaud them. Okay, back to the awards. This one is more of a duel. So I want to know who your biggest surprise was coming into camp, coming out of camp, a guy that made you go, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming, or he exceeded my expectations. But at the same time, damn, I'm a bit disappointed in this player on the other side of that. So your biggest surprise and biggest disappointment coming out of 2024 training camp?
I think the biggest surprise to me was I didn't realize that Kalen Carson, and I know he's a rookie, I didn't realize, I thought he was good. He's got a chance to be really good at playing corner for this football team. And I mean that in a way of, when I evaluated Wake Forest, I thought, man, this is a good corner. I like his aggressiveness. I like the way he covers. I like his temperament. He's better. He's better than what I saw at Wake Forest. He gets this NFL game. He understands the magnitude of play to play and coverage and being in the right spot and playing with technique. And you could see when he gives up a route and there's a catch and it's a contested play, you could tell it bothers him. He really cares about how he does his job or goes about his job. And I think that Al Harris has done a great job with him. Mike Zimmer, I mean, they've got this kid to the point that if something were to happen to one of your other corners, this kid could go in there and play. And I don't think you'd miss a beat with him. I really don't. He's got that kind of temperament, that kind of toughness, the willingness to tackle. He didn't start off particularly well in the Rams game. He gave up some stuff early in that game. He looked a little timid, a little nervous, but he made a play where he stopped it for no gain or gain of 2 or something like that. And then from that tackle on, It was driving on the ball. It
Yeah.
was knocking balls away. It was being he gives these Cowboy receivers fits the way that he plays. So I'd say, to me, I saw a good player. This kid's got a chance to be really, 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 really good. And so that was something I was. Go
I
ahead.
could add on Carson. He just seems like he fits this Mike Zimmer's defense so well. The aggressiveness. You talk about driving on the ball. Zimmer's going to ask these guys to play more vision defense than Dan Quinn did. Yeah. And one thing I noticed, and I showed a few of the highlights there with his tape at Wake Forest, was this guy will run through you. So if you're a wide receiver trying to come out and block him, he'll run right through you. If you're throwing a quick pass, you better hope he olays and misses, because he's trying to take your head off. He's extremely physical and kind of like a quiet assassin type, it seems like. Now, he's not going to bark a whole lot, but when he makes a play, he'll let you know. So
he is very competitive, and you could tell he does not want to give up one reception in practice. And when he's kind of looking to Al Harris after a rep. Al kind of coaches him up on what he needs to do, be better. Oh no, great rep, that kind of thing. He's locked in. He's even better. I couldn't imagine. This is a guy that they had on their board that they drafted, went in the 5th round, and here he is. They had him on the board in the 3rd. So, that they were looking. It was a deep draft. I know you and I and Vach and others, work on this draft pretty extensively, and that was something that we were all kind of looking at. And with Carson, he was a 5th round pick. I just want to make sure I had that right.
Yep, 5th round.
But that was a guy on Dallas's board that was a 3rd round. They had him on the board in the 3rd, and when they made the pick, it was like that, what they say, that blinking light to them. So I was like, man, okay, here we go. I kind of felt like that he was a better player than where he was selected, but he is an even better player than I even evaluated.
When I was watching him, I was like, man, I think coming into camp, I was like, man, I think he can be a fine slot cornerback at some point, right? One of those aggressive Mike Hilton, McDuffie types. And then we get to camp, and he plays almost predominantly on the edge, or I'm sorry, on the boundary. So
on the boundary, does.
My question to you, Bryan, if something were to happen to Diggs or Bland,
I think so.
They're moving him out to the boundary, or something happened to Jay Lou.
They're keeping Jay Lou inside, and they're going to play one of those. They're going to play. I know they brought in with Booth and all that.
Right.
He's a better player than Booth. Booth, the only thing Booth has on him is experience. That's the only thing. But to me, I'm throwing that kid out there. If something were to happen to Bland or to Diggs, then I think Carson could step in there and play really, really well.
The tricky one is, if something happens to Jay Lou, do you now move Bland inside and you throw the rookie out there?
Yeah, that's
a tricky one.
That's a tricky one. I learned something. Talk about being at camp. I learned something. We got a chance to interview Bland. He had never played in the slot until he got to the Dallas Cowboys. He didn't play any slot at Fresno State, not one time. And I'm like, you're not serious, are you? He goes, no, I have never played in the slot until I got here.
Just shows you how good he is.
My gosh. Okay, well, how did you pick that? That just shows you his ability to kind of read the situation and be really good at it.
On the flip side, we talked about your biggest surprise. Who was your biggest disappointment coming out this camp?
Yeah, we just talked a lot about Mozzie, because I thought there was so much inconsistency there. I was hoping for the best, with him. I think that was something that really bothered me, because I felt like, coming off the injury, he's gonna come in there. He's gonna want to prove people. There's been times where he looks good, and then he reverts back, and there's just no consistency with him. And it's I'm sorry, it seems like low hanging fruit. It really, really does. I tell you what, I was really disappointed in was the injury to Sam Williams. I think that was, if you don't want to pick on Mozzie, then you could say, okay, the injury to Sam Williams didn't help things, but you might have learned something about, with Nealon, So sometimes things work. Sometimes I'm going to say something though, Will.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm kind of rambling around.
Oh, you're good.
I'm disappointed in the tight end room.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to go there. I am. Go ahead.
Because the tight end room, I think there was things with John Stevens, and this is the way I have the tight ends ranked in my mind: Ferguson, Stevens, and then Schoonmaker. That's how I have them in my mind. And I think they're only going to keep 3. And I think that Hunter Lipke is probably going to be the fullback and be the 4th if they need a tight end. But that group I thought was going to be a strength. I know Jerry Jones, before we left camp, Jerry Jones was talking about the tight end room is going to be a difficult navigation for them. And that makes sense because you're really not sure of really what you have there. You're sure of Ferguson. I'm going to say this: Stevens has gotten better as a blocker, still a ways away, but he's gotten better. Schoonmaker, kind of the same boat, got a little bit better, but still a ways away. We'll see with Ferguson how this all plays out, but their tight end room is kind of when, they thought maybe, we'll give Span Ford, we'll give him $250,000 guaranteed. And excuse me. And he could be, he'll be our blocker guy and this, that, and the other. That's not
Panning
the
out.
case. Not the case right now. So to me, I don't think we thought it would potentially be a strength. I don't know if it is a strength right now.
Yeah, I echoed the same sentiment the other day. I focused on Span Ford as my one player as a disappointment, but then I collectively put the whole unit there because
the whole unit,
I thought this unit would pop a little bit more than it did. And I don't know if it's because, working with backups in preseason or whatnot, but there just hasn't been those moments. I remember Jake Ferguson, his rookie year, we saw he had moments in preseason, right? We were like, hold up, this guy. We saw Jake in the second year, hold up, this guy has something. John Stevens had even some moments. There's been really nothing from this group. And, I worry a little bit in how the 12 personnel package will execute during the season. Is it just going to be, hey, we throw out Schoonmaker, he's a blocker. Hey, we throw out John Stevens, he's going to catch the rock. So now we're kind of tipping our hand a little bit.
It could be Ferguson, and you might get Hunter Lipke is what you might get as your 12 personnel group.
Interesting.
Then you get a blocker, but you also get a guy that can catch the ball. Schoonmaker I think there's things with Schoonmaker that I think he got better. The thing about you always worry about with Schoonmaker is his health. Just when you feel like you're making progress with Schoonmaker, then there's got a hamstring injury, got a groin injury, got something happens to him. But they need him to be much, much better. And he did make improvement over last year. But from what you saw on Michigan tape, he's yet to live up to that billing, in my opinion.
Real quick, you had brought up, really disappointed in the Sam Williams injury. I was too. I was a little nervous on how they would attack it after the fact. But they went out and got Carl Lawson. And I know a lot of people are kind of questionable on Lawson, but when he's healthy, the numbers speak for itself. The tape speaks for itself. I'd argue you probably get better from a pass rush standpoint with Carl Lawson.
Yeah, that's the thing with Carl is that you're probably not going to get the guy of 3-4 years ago.
Then that becomes an issue.
Then that becomes the issue. And I think there's a lot of people out there. That they're in that situation where they hear the name Carl Lawson, and they're thinking a player of the days gone by that they're getting. But it's very much a situation where Carl Lawson could be good, helpful, rotational. But if you're thinking of Carl Lawson of 3-4 years ago, that might not be the same guy you're going to get. We'll see how that plays. I saw things with the Jets. He looked like a much better run player than he did a pass rusher. So let's see if things kind of things kind of turn around for him here in a little bit.
All right, let's round out our MVP, our Oxnard Training Camp Awards with both the offensive MVP and the defensive MVP as you were out there, B.
Yeah, I think when you start to talk about the offensive MVP is that it's low-hanging fruit again. You could talk about these offense. I personally, I loved what I saw from Tyler Smith. Absolutely loved me some Tyler Smith. Every day, consistent. It didn't matter. I mean, there were times there were guys going against him one-on-one. And I know that's kind of unconventional to pick a offensive lineman, but because you could say Dak, Mike Zimmer challenged Dak in a way that Dak has not been challenged in a training camp. He challenged him. And I look at this as Dak fighting through a really good scheme that he had to navigate. But if you look at overall just day after day after day, practice after practice after practice, rep after rep after rep, Tyler Smith's one of the best players you have on that offense. There's some great players, but Tyler Smith, and I know it's damn Bryant's an offensive lineman. No, be damn glad you got that left guard. That left guard's better than your right guard. The way he plays. Yeah.
I've seen clips. Yeah. And again, you got to be careful with clips, but yeah. I'm confident to say this with Tyler Smith. I've seen clips where he just stonewalls. He's not getting pushed back. He's moving the line of scrimmage. He just looks dominant.
Yeah.
I think he's on the way to being that next great Cowboys offensive lineman for sure.
Yeah, he is. He is really playing at a very, very high level. But I could say you can say Dak because Dak. There were days where Dak climbing the pocket, throwing the ball, and he climbing the pocket because Tyler Smith's kicking somebody's ass.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And so I'll tell you what, I kind of feel like to me that was when you look at consistency throughout. That's why I'd give him the job. The defensive MVP. It's really funny because you could say Micah Parsons because when you watch practice, Micah can wreck practice if he wants. He could wreck practice. The really good ones can wreck practice if they want. He can, just the way he rushes, he can wreck practice. But I'll tell you this though, on the defense, they've figured out something. This Eric Kendricks.
I was waiting. I was like, please say Eric Kendricks.
This Eric Kendricks is for real. And let me also mention a couple of the safeties if I could, because the safety group as a room is played well.
Oh man, yeah.
I will say this, I feel like though Hooker, I never felt like I was really fair to him. Hooker's playing well. Wilson, there's some things that I think Bell might be a little bit better cover guy than Wilson. I'm just talking about the room.
Yep.
And then, and you look at that group, and then Wanye Thomas has had some really, really good moments too. Okay. As a room, that was good. But when you look at these linebackers, Kendricks is around the ball all the time. It's mojo moment. It's third down, all that, stuff that they do. And who's knocking a pass down? Who's stopping the run? Who's getting outside and tagging off on the back when the ball bounces to the outside? It's Eric Kendricks. This guy can read. He reacts. We'll see what kind of finisher. I mean, his history is he's a really good finisher. But to me, it's something that they haven't had. It's something that they haven't had at linebacker like that, because his ability to play downhill, to get to the football, to play in coverage. We've seen guys like Sean Lee have really good success being able to play run and also defend the pass. This guy, when there's third down plays and fourth down plays to be made, this cat is generally in the vicinity of that ball.
Man, Eric Kendricks, and again, he's only practiced I won't say a handful of times, but he sat out a handful of practices, I should say that. And
Yeah.
I think because of the Michael Parsons and the rookies and the safeties making plays and interceptions, we kind of forget that this guy's kind of been steady Eddie. And I feel like he has the potential to be the heart of this defense. And not even potential. I think he is an upgrade in all due respects to LVE and those before LVE. But I think Kendricks has the potential to be the best middle linebacker you've had since Sean Lee. Like
There's no question. They've upgraded this linebacking room so much. They did not want to go through. You could tell when we visited with the coaches during the draft, the draft show that we did for 3 days there, and we got a chance to talk to them. And they loved Leofau. They loved the possibility of Overshown getting healthy. They loved, with Clark. Clark looks like a different player. But man, that room as a whole, that you will get better. You will get better playing run defense just because of those guys have a better understanding. They run to the ball, they read well, and they finish. That's why you will play better run defense. Don't worry about having massive defensive tackles, which helps. But if you got linebackers that can read, react, and finish, you could play really good run defense.
Yeah, they get downhill. And I said this before, and actually I would love to ask you this, but I feel like if a collective group is playing a specific way, that's a coaching philosophy being led upon them. But if a collective group is playing downhill, like this group is, I feel like Paul Gunther and Mike Zimmer are coaching these guys different than maybe a Scott McCurley or
Scott McCurley. Yeah. And Scott's involved.
He's still here.
He's still coaching them up. So but Mike and Gunther and McCurley, they've got a really good room to work with. And now you got to just hope the health stays, solid, because now they just got Clark back practicing. You got a hip pointer with Overshown. Hopefully you get all these guys healthy and ready to go, because they could be a problem for offenses to have to deal with.
Indeed, man. One more award. Scout MVP goes to Bryan Broaddus of DallasCowboys.com and 105.3 The Fan. AB, this has been great, and I know we're not done. We talked about certain things we're going to work on throughout the season.
Guys,
Stay
absolutely.
tuned, man.
Absolutely. Well, I really do appreciate you. I appreciate your platform. I think you do a hell of a job.
Thank you.
Your audience. I love being on with you guys. Hopefully we could do a lot of these during the season, maybe even get out live and do some stuff. We've got some opportunities to do those things. So we'll figure all this out and be posting up and telling everybody what we got going on.
You heard the man. Keep your ears and eyes open. There's some good things coming, Cowboys Nation. I'm going to go ahead and let Bryan get going. He's got some things he's got to handle. That way we can get him rested up. We got the Cowboys game tomorrow. Next week, we can get you back on maybe and talk about what we saw in that third game. If you did, on the way out, one player, just give me one player that needs to have a standout performance tomorrow to make this team.
I think when you're looking at, Eric Scott would be a guy. The cornerback room is kind of one of those things. And at any one of these wide receivers you want to mention, Jalen Cropper is another guy I think it needs to play a little bit better.
There you go. I'm going to press this button, Bryan, and get up out of here.
Push the goddamn button.
I got it. Hey, Cowboys Nation, appreciate y'all for joining us this morning. If you missed this, run it